Well, I've got this little plastic strip with LED lights on it that I'm putting on. This thing hooks into the 4-pin trailer light output, their socket, and then it lights up with turn signals and the brake lights, and it's got a white wire on here that you can wire into the backup, the reverse lights, so it comes on to give a little extra visibility. I don't drive down south anymore. I don't drive much in the winter and night anymore, so I don't know if it's a thing that's going to really be necessary, but I got it a while back when we were driving down south and at night. Anyway, this is the first chance I've had to put it on. Took the tailgate off. I got to work on the tailgate anyway. That gives me better access to that. I could have put it on when I had the bumper off, but the tailgate still hung down to there. So it's got 3M tape on it, which is pretty good double stick sided tape. But I'm using the heat gun to kind of heat it up. I cleaned all this off with paint thinner, and then lacquer thinner, and then acrylic clean, and then some other stuff that I have that's supposed to clean it up for that kind of stuff. And I've got it started down there. The problem is we've got the hole for the spare tire winch, and that's right in line with where that thing's got to go. So I'm going to see if I can heat that up with a heat gun and mold that around that. Probably should get something to protect that. Wire. Feed that in there. I'm just gonna. Alright, that lights up. So what it said, instructions I found for this one, is that this yellow light is supposed to hook up to the driving lights or the regular tail lights to just be a dim light for that, and then the white one hooks up to the reverse lights. So the tail lights, part of it goes out when the turn signal comes on, which is nothing wrong with that. And there's the hazard warning. Well, that kind of strobes with a hazard warning. That's pretty good. That really gets some attention. That's the brake. With the brake, I got a board jammed between the seat and the brake pedal to hold the brakes down. The whole thing flashes again with the brakes. Well, I've got all new parts, guts to go in, the latch and whatnot. I got a kit for the tailgate. So I guess we can start taking that thing apart now. It's got these plastic pivot points on it, bushings that go in there. See, this one's just a cup on the left side, and that one's pretty well worn out. I cleaned up the socket that it goes over and put a little bit of Cor-Seal on it. So I'll clean out that socket on the other side that this goes in, and whoop! It just got some little tabs in here where it snaps in there. Well, this one's pretty much wore out. The one on the right side has got a notch in it, and the pin that it goes over is flat on two sides and round on one side, of course, to match up with this. And this one's actually, yeah, the little tabs on there broke off, but otherwise it's in okay shape. But like I said, we'll clean that socket out too. Replace those. This takes a T45 Torx, and I don't have a T45 Torx for my impact. Yeah, the biggest Torx I've got down here is a T40. I'm going to have to go look and see if I can find a T45 someplace. Well, this pickup has been, as they say, drove hard and put away wet. It's only got less than 170,000 miles on it. I've driven it between Alaska and the Northwest states about 4 times, round trip. And then one year we got a camper, pulled a trailer, and went down through the western United States, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, back up through California into Oregon, in Washington and then back to Alaska. Every time we went south and came back with it, I towed a big trailer load of stuff with it, coming back through Canada and back into Alaska. But it's been used pretty hard around here. I've got that dump trailer, and we've hauled a lot of rock with that dump trailer, hauled equipment up into the woods and hauled logs and all kinds of stuff. So it hadn't exactly all been highway miles on it. But that tailgate is really not in too bad a shape considering what it's been through. The only real problem that I've had with it is with those tie rods in there coming loose from the plastic nuts on the latch. But that usually happened in the wintertime when things would get froze up and we couldn't get the latch to close the tailgate. And so it got driven quite a bit and left out in the weather and stuff with the tailgate open, where snow and rain and whatnot could pile up on the tailgate and then run down inside the tailgate and stuff, and to get into all that stuff. So surprisingly, it's not really in bad shape considering that, except for those nuts on the latch, on the release handle. But I've sprayed it down a bunch of times with different lubricants to try to keep it from freezing up, or try to loosen it up to get it to work. And I had to heat it up with a heat gun in the wintertime when it'd freeze up to get it to close, things like that. So of course you spray anything with oil of any kind, even WD-40 or whatever, and the dust is going to collect on stuff. So it was pretty dirty inside. I went to take those latches off there, and I didn't have a T45 driver. That's what it took. The biggest I've got is a T40. I had to go to town and get a T45 driver. Before I left, I sprayed that down with some purple cleaner and let it soak, and then when I come back I sprayed it down again. I just took it over and set it up over with a water hose and scrub brush and scrubbed it down, and scrubbed down inside of the top portion of it where I could reach. I got most of the crud out of there, so the latch where it attaches looks a lot better. It's not nearly as gnarly looking, nasty looking as what it was. So I've got my T45 driver now. I can go ahead and start taking those latches out of there. I went to town to get a T45 Torx, and the only thing they had were these 3/8 drive for ratchet set or socket set style. Well, I've got an adapter for it. I'll see if this will work with this wrench, and before I have to put it in a 3/8 inch drive or something like that. We'll see if this works. These little torque wrench here, impact wrench, is pretty powerful actually for a little thing like that. Okay, that worked. There's that one out of there. Alright, I was wondering about that. This is actually in really good shape. There's nothing wrong with it. This tie rod is actually not in bad shape. It's coated with coating here that I had put on the bed of the truck, but I don't really see anything wrong with that thing at all. This little tie rod connects in through a little just a bend right there, but then it's got a keeper on it to hold it in place. So we'll get the new one in there, I guess. Before I put that in there, I'm going to coat everything with peralkatone like I've done everything else. I've got the body of that coated really good with peralkatone, especially on this space where it mates up with the tailgate itself. And I'm going to spray the mechanism here, the pivoting part of it, with some Molly Mist dry film lubricant. I could spray it with another type of lubricant, but anything I sprayed it with is going to attract dust and dirt to it. This Molly Mist dries, and it doesn't attract any dirt or anything to it, so we'll spray the moving parts with that. And the new cable comes with a bolt already on it, so we'll mount that up there. Now, the kit doesn't come with a new bolt for this upper bolt. You get to reuse the old one. Alright, that's the new latches. Now I got to figure out, take the actuator out. And that looks like that takes 3/8 or so. Well, here's the actuator. This is what the handle attaches to. And these are the little nuts they use on the end of that. And they're just little plastic nuts, and they just snap down over the tie rods there. But when they get a lot of force on them, they just pop out of there, pop loose, and then they won't stay in anymore. So you can see I put some JB weld or something like that in there, some kind of epoxy in there to reinforce those once they, and that worked pretty good for a couple years now. And there's really nothing wrong with this except for those things there. They could be just get new ones of those or make something up for that. Now I got to figure out how to get the handle out of there, and I think that's all there is on the handle is those two nuts that I just took off there. So there's a bracket right here that's welded into this tailgate, and when you put those tie rods in, you got to be careful and get them over that bracket, because if they go down behind it, then you can't get it around there to hook that latch up to it, to the release lever up to it. You know, it's easy to get those behind that tab when you put those latches in. What do we got? We got little plastic retainer tabs, looks like, on there. So I'm going to stand that tailgate up to where I can get to that latch on the outside, the handle. Oh yeah, that just popped right out of there now. So see, there's nothing wrong with that handle. It's this pivot pin here is rusty, but otherwise there's nothing wrong with it. I'm going to lay that down, clean this all out before I put it back together. Right, that's easy enough. There's the new mechanism, just simple. It just drops right down in here and bolts on with these two little nuts. Little plastic pins on that handle that go into locator holes on that tailgate. So that lines up perfectly. No big deal on that. So the mechanism here, got a lever. The lever on the handle, or tang on the handle, sticks out, pushes down on that. And that just pivots that arm, pulls the tie rods. So I'm going to squirt a little bit of moly lube in here on the twist and turning portion of it, and put some Alcatone on the rest of it. I don't know why I said this has lasted 15 years now. Last another 15 years, I won't have to worry about it. Okay, that's in there. Now, we'll pop these nuts open here. Alrighty. Alright, that's good. That's done. I'm going to clean out this socket here where that bushing goes in there on both sides. Clean that out, and probably put a little bit of core seal in there, and then I'll put those bushings in. I've got to run the wire down. I've got to figure out where to run this wire. Well, here's a big hole right here. I can run it into there. So I'll get a piece of wire and run up in there, and then pull that wire through there. Well, there's a hole right there exactly for that purpose. I gotta find, fish that in there. Alright, I'm going to let that core seal set up a little bit before I put those bushings in there. Then I'll put the bushings in and go ahead and put the tailgate up and try it out before I put the cover back on it on this side. Well, I've got one more thing to add on here. This is a piston or a hydraulic shock strut thingy. It's to help lower the tailgate down so that the weight of the tailgate comes down slower. Oh, like my wife, she really doesn't like it with bring the tailgate down. It's really heavy for her. I had one on there before where it mounts onto the tailgate. The stud on there broke off. It's got kind of a rivet nut here that goes in there in the hole, and it can fit in this hole right here. So I could put that on the right side instead of on the left side and just leave the left side as is, or try to drill this stud out of this side. Well, I'm waiting for that core seal to set up to cure enough to put those bushings in there. I think I'm going to go ahead and mount this little strut on there. So we got a hole over here on this side in the bottom of the tailgate. It's got this nut zert type thing here. This is a nut that goes in there and then expands. You tighten it up to fill that hole. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is put that in there. Anybody that's doing this full time, does a lot of these, they have tools for doing that. But this one has got a setup. It's got a little thrust washer in here. It's got ball bearings in it. Then you got a washer on the bottom side against the face of this nut zert. And then there's another washer, a nut, and a stud, a bolt that goes through there. Now, it takes a 10mm wrench, hex head. I use the hex to hold the bolt and use the 10mm to pull that stud. Alright, that just took a little bit to get it in there. Okay, now we got a nut in there, and there's what this tool was. Got a little thrust washer there. Loctite on there. That's not the right one. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, there. Oh yeah, I just happen to have a 13mm here. Alright, that ball stud is in there. Now we got to take out a stud out of the back of the truck and replace it with another ball stud there. Alright, that doesn't want to come out with that thing. Doubt if I can get it out with this then. Oh, there. Broke loose. There we go. Well, that's got a little shoulder on the bottom of that bolt there for some reason. Oh, I know why. That's where the strap hooks onto. That's right. Now this just snaps on. Well, one side snaps on. Doesn't make any difference, I don't think. And then this side snaps on the tailgate, on the ball on the tailgate. That's pretty much it for the tailgate now, except for putting it back on. I got the tailgate all mounted up and it works good. And I put that shock strut on there, that dampening strut on there on the right side, and I figured out how to mount it, but it's not going to work over there on that side. The hinge points of the tailgate, the one on the right side has got a cutout on it so you can pull it up to take the tailgate off. And every time that tailgate comes down, this shock strut here puts pressure on it and pushes the tailgate out, and it comes loose from this pivot point right here. So I'm going to have to move it over onto this side. This side I had already put it in, and the stud broke off, the ball stud broke off. So what I'm going to have to do is try to drill that out, I guess, and take that ball stud out of the other side and put that shock strut over on this side. Well, except for that shock strut on there, I'm happy with everything. You see the lights through there between the bumper and the tailgate real good. And I mounted the Schrader valves right here and one on the other side in little holes that were already there. And they're easy enough to get to with a filler to air up the shock struts. And they don't interfere with the tailgate at all. The tailgate doesn't interfere with them. Those things kind of strobe, that light bar strobes kind of when I have the hazard flashers on. So that's good. You can only see them within a certain range of the height of the bumper and the tailgate, but that's okay. So the tailgate, the new handle works good. Actually, if I make sure and push in on the tailgate as it's coming down, that works okay, so maybe I'll just leave that way for now. The pain in the butt to drill those studs out there. But that all works good. It latches good. Well, I'm happy with that. So now I've just got to run all the wiring and do that. So I've got a wire to run up to the reverse light up here for that bar, and then I've got wires that I run for these LED lights to go front to the front and hook into a switch, and then I've got this bundle here that goes into the camera in that tailgate handle, so I've got to feed that up through there. So I've got some wiring to do, and I think I'm going to bring another wire back. I think I'm going to get an 8 gauge cable and run back and bring back here, because when we use that dump trailer, the battery discharges pretty fast on it when we're dumping, and we can only get about 2 or 3 dumps out of it, and then we got to charge the battery up. It doesn't get enough electricity pulling through there from the truck to do anything with the battery in the length of time that we drive. So I think I'm going to run an 8 gauge cable, run it through a fuse and stuff there, and run it back here, and then make a jumper that I can use to plug in that battery, the charging system from the truck, directly into the trailer, the dump trailer when we're using the dump trailer.